To understand how a teenage girl came to write the most enduring horror story in the English language, we must first understand the particular cruelty of growing up brilliant, motherless, and surrounded by ideas too powerful for the world that would judge her. See, Mary Godwin, better known as Mary Shelley, was born into radical philosophy like other children are born into wealth or poverty. Indeed, it was simply in the air she breathed, the conversations that drifted up staircases, and the dangerous books that lined every wall of her father's house. Her mother had died giving her life. Her father had retreated into grief and debt. Her stepmother made clear that she would never be welcome in her own home. And so Mary learned early what it meant to be abandoned, to be created, and then cast aside, to seek connection with the dead because the living offered so little comfort. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Allure, we share the tale of Mary Shelley, the teenage runaway, scandalous lover and grieving mother who channeled a lifetime of loss into the novel that invented science fiction and horror as we know them. August 30th, 1797, Mary Wollstonecraft. Godwin entered the world carrying a double inheritance of genius and tragedy that would shape literature forever. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, had scandalised England with A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, arguing that women weren't naturally inferior, but systematically denied education and opportunity, revolutionary ideas that made her infamous. Her father, William Godwin, earned his own notoriety as the radical philosopher behind inquiry concerning political justice, which attacked government and marriage as forms of tyranny, enslaving humanity. 11 days after giving birth, Wollstonecraft died of puerperal fever, leaving an infant who would spend her entire life haunted by the ghost of a mother she never knew. The maternal void created a psychological wound that would bleed into Frankenstein. Themes of abandonment, motherless creation and monstrous births echo throughout Mary's masterwork, the creature's motherlessness reflecting her own. William Godwin remarried in 1801 to Mary Jane Clairmont, importing a stepmother Mary despised, and a blended household containing 5 children of various parentage and conflicting loyalties. The new Mrs. Godwin systematically worked to alienate Mary from her father, discouraging her intellectual pursuits, while favouring her own children, Charles and Jane, later Claire, Clairmont, over Wollstonecraft's daughters. The household now contained Mary and her half-sister Fanny Imlay, Wollstonecraft's daughter from an earlier relationship with Gilbert Imlay, the Clairmont children, and later William Jr., born to Godwin and his new wife. Despite this domestic warfare, the Godwin household attracted London's intellectual elite. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Wordsworth, scientist Humphrey Davy, and philosophers drawn to Godwin's radical ideas like moths to flame. Young Mary would hide behind sofas, listening to these great minds debate philosophy, politics and literature, absorbing radical ideas that would later fuel her own revolutionary fiction. Mary received no formal education, a bitter irony given her mother's passionate advocacy for female learning, but devoured her father's extensive library with frightening intensity and determination. She taught herself French, Italian, Latin and Greek through solitary study, published her first work Mounseer Nong Tong Po at age 11 through her father's publishing firm, and absorbed radical philosophy like oxygen. Godwin described his 14-year-old daughter as singularly bold, somewhat imperious and active of mind, possessing a perseverance in everything she undertakes almost invincible, qualities that would enable her survival. The household simultaneously nurtured and stifled her genius, intellectual stimulation from visiting luminaries competing with emotional deprivation from a jealous stepmother and an increasingly distant, debt-ridden father. Mary haunted her mother's grave at St Pancras churchyard, reading Wollstonecraft's works among the tombstones, communing with the feminist icon who existed only in pages and paternal memories. This Gothic childhood, motherless daughter, hostile stepmother, graveyard meditations, radical philosophy, provided perfect preparation for creating the century's most enduring monster story about abandonment and revenge. By 16, Mary had absorbed her parents' revolutionary ideas about marriage, government, and female capability, preparing to act on principles that would scandalise even those who preached them. Percy Bysshe Shelley first visited the Godwin household in 1812, already married, but searching for the intellectual partnership that would ultimately cost him everything. The philosopher's daughter met the baronet's son when she was 14, he 20. Percy drawn to William Godwin's radical ideas like a moth to philosophical flame. Born to Sir Timothy Shelley, 2nd Baronet of Castle Goring, Percy had sacrificed his inheritance for radical principles, publishing The Necessity of Atheism at Oxford, and earning immediate expulsion for his heresy. His family cut his inheritance, and in poverty he had eloped with 16-year-old Harriet Westbrook in 1811, a marriage born of financial desperation rather than intellectual compatibility. By 1814 his marriage crumbled, while Harriet carried their second child, leaving Percy seeking intellectual companionship among William Godwin's radical circle, where minds matched his own fervour. Meeting Mary again that May, Percy discovered what Harriet lacked, the daughter of his two most revered philosophers, raised on the very principles that had cost him Oxford, inheritance and respectability. June 26, 1814 became their defining moment. Mary declared her love at her mother's graveside in St Pancras churchyard, pledging herself where Wollstonecraft lay buried 11 days after birthing her. The symbolism blazed with meaning, swearing love to a married man at the tomb of the feminist who died birthing her, rebellion sanctified by maternal presence and radical heritage. When Percy told William Godwin he intended to leave his wife for Mary, the philosopher who had written that marriage was the worst of all laws reacted with conventional fury. Godwin banished Percy from his house, forbade Mary from seeing him, placed her under her despised stepmother's custody, calling their passion licentious, while still demanding Percy's financial support. The man who'd lived with Wollstonecraft before marriage, who'd preached free love in print, transformed into a conventional patriarch when his own 16-year-old daughter embraced those principles. July 28, 1814 at dawn, Mary crept from her father's house at 4:15 in the morning to meet Percy and begin their continental exile together. Claire Claremont accompanied them, whether as chaperone, co-conspirator, or herself infatuated with Percy remains historically ambiguous, adding another scandal layer to their already shocking elopement. They hired a chaise to Dover, crossed the Channel in storms so violent Percy began to reason upon death, landing in Calais where Mrs. Godwin caught up, but failed to retrieve them. Travelling through France devastated by Napoleonic wars, they witnessed destruction and poverty, moving by donkey, mule, carriage and foot, reading Shakespeare, Rousseau and Mary Wollstonecraft aloud together. Mary kept a joint journal with Percy, her first entry poignantly completing his sentence. Mary was there. Shelley was also with me. Literary partnership, beginning in literally shared prose. Financial desperation forced their September return to England, where they found themselves complete outcasts. Society's doors slammed shut against the radical philosopher's daughter who'd stolen a married poet. William Godwin refused to see Mary for 2 years, though he continued writing Percy demanding money. Emotional abandonment, compounded by financial exploitation from the father who taught her these principles. Vicious rumours circulated that Godwin had sold 2 daughters to Percy for £1,500, while Mary's half-sister Fanny, forbidden from visiting, grew increasingly despondent and isolated. The 16-year-old who'd run away for love found herself pregnant, ostracised and penniless, dependent on a man whose wife Harriet refused to grant divorce, trapped between principles and reality. Claire's mysterious pregnancy and Lord Byron's flight from England would soon unite these outcasts at Lake Geneva, where apocalyptic weather would birth literature's most enduring monster. Mount Tambora had exploded in the Dutch East Indies on April 10, 1815, ejecting 100 cubic kilometres of ash and sulphur dioxide that now circled the globe, creating a stratospheric veil. The volcanic winter plunged 1816 into meteorological chaos. Switzerland suffered 130 days of rain between April and September. with afternoon temperatures plummeting 3 to 4 degrees Celsius below normal. Lord Byron had fled England that April, escaping accusations of incest with half-sister Augusta Lee, whose third child, Elizabeth Medora, was widely believed to be Byron's biological offspring. His one-year marriage to wealthy heiress Annabella Milbank had collapsed amid scandal, the mathematician levelling charges of homosexuality and unnatural practices that transformed England's celebrated poet into its notorious exile. Percy and Mary arrived at Lake Geneva in May 1816, fleeing their own disasters, crushing debt, social ostracism, creditors' pursuit, and William Godwin's continued rejection despite endless financial demands. Claire Claremont, now 18 and pregnant with Byron's child from their London affair, had orchestrated this meeting through correspondence one biographer called Machiavellian manipulation, engineering the rendezvous. Byron rented Villa Diodati with commanding mountain views. The Shelleys took nearby Maison Chapuis. Volcanic weather trapped them together in Gothic confinement throughout the apocalyptic summer. Almost perpetual rain confines us principally to the house, Mary wrote, describing lightning illuminating mountain pines on Jura before pitchy blackness succeeded, and the thunder came in frightful bursts. For entertainment, Byron produced Phantasmagoriana from the Villa Library, German ghost stories titled Gespensterbuch in the original, translated into French by Jean-Baptiste Benoit Ariès, which they read aloud. The collection contained tales of the occult, murder, haunted chambers, spectral visitations, stories calculated to disturb, which they consumed for 3 consecutive nights by candlelight. Byron then proposed his famous challenge. Each person must write an original ghost story, a literary competition to test their creative powers against one another. Byron attempted a vampire tale involving 2 friends and resurrection, but abandoned it immediately. Percy started fragment of a ghost story but quit. Polidori conceived ideas for Ernest's Berchtold. Mary alone struggled for days without inspiration, feeling intense pressure to match the celebrated poets, anxious about having nothing worthy to offer the competition. The household had been discussing galvanism, Luigi Galvani's 1780s discovery that electrical currents made dead frogs' legs twitch, suggesting electricity might constitute the literal spark of life. Giovanni Aldini, Galvani's nephew, staged notorious public demonstrations applying electricity to executed criminals' bodies, making corpses clench jaws, raise arms, and open eyes before horrified audiences. June 16th, between 2 and 3 in the morning, with a gibbous moon filtering through shutters, Mary experienced what she called her waking dream, while lying sleepless. I saw with shut eyes but acute mental vision, I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together, watching it show signs of life. She witnessed the creature stir with uneasy, half-vital motion, saw the creator flee in horror, then watched the monster standing at his bedside with yellow, watery but speculative eyes. The vision merged scientific possibility with personal anguish. Her firstborn Clara had died at 8 days old in February 1815, inspiring recurring dreams of warming the dead infant by fires. What terrified me will terrify others, Mary realised at dawn, understanding she need only transcribe the nightmare vision that had possessed her. She had found it, at last, invented science fiction and horror as we know them. Mary spent 1816 and 17 transforming her Geneva vision into Frankenstein, while death stalked her family with methodical cruelty, each loss deepening her narrative. September 18th, 16 brought devastating news. Fanny Imlay, Mary's half-sister, had committed suicide in Wales, her life made supernumerary by her sister's adventures, forbidden from family contact. December delivered worse tragedy. Percy's abandoned wife Harriet, pregnant with another man's child, drowned herself in London's Serpentine Lake, her suicide clearing Mary's path to legitimate marriage. They wed December 30th at St Mildred's Church, Bread Street, London, with William Godwin suddenly attending, his philosophical opposition to marriage conveniently forgotten once respectability beckoned. Writing while pregnant or nursing, Mary crafted literature's first science fiction novel throughout 1816 and 17, exploring masculine creation without feminine participation, birth without mothers, ambition without responsibility. Victor Frankenstein abandons his creature immediately after animation, fleeing the motherless monster who then seeks terrible revenge for loveless creation. Mary's every abandonment and loss made fictional flesh. The novel revolutionized literature by combining Gothic elements with contemporary science, philosophical speculation with emotional truth, creating entirely new possibilities for fiction about technology and human ambition. Published anonymously January 1, 1818, Frankenstein shocked critics who universally assumed Percy authored it, believing no woman capable of conceiving such philosophical terror and scientific speculation. The Quarterly Review deemed it horrible and disgusting absurdity, while Sir Walter Scott praised its power in Blackwoods, never suspecting the teenage female authorship hidden behind anonymity. Success arrived shadowed by unbearable sorrow. Clara Everina Shelley died in Venice September 24, 1818, barely 1 year old, another child lost to fate's cruelty. June 7, 1819 brought the cruelest blow. 3-year-old William Shelley died of malaria in Rome, leaving Mary nearly destroyed by grief and maternal guilt. "I feel that I am not fit for anything, and therefore not fit to live," Mary wrote after William's death, contemplating suicide, while Percy composed abstract verses about skylarks. Only Percy Florence, born November 12, 1819, survived to adulthood among Mary's 4 children, a crushing statistical tragedy, typical yet devastating in Georgian motherhood. Between funerals, Mary wrote prolifically, Matilda explored father-daughter incest and guilt. Valperga examined political liberty versus tyranny through 14th century Italian history. Critics missed her sophisticated political frameworks. The Last Man, begun 1824, imagined plague annihilating humanity by the 21st century, creating dystopian fiction before the genre existed, rejecting her father's optimism for cosmic pessimism. Set in 1997, the novel depicted humanity's extinction through plague spreading from Constantinople, leaving only narrator Lionel Verney as the last relic of a beloved race. She envisioned apocalypse while Percy celebrated nature, her fiction darker, more prescient than his poetry, grounded in loss rather than abstraction, understanding creation's terrible costs. The novel insisted humanity is contingent on community, that isolated individuals lose meaning, a philosophy born from her own losses and social isolation after scandal. Critics dismissed her as Percy's wife, writing mere romances, missing how she'd invented entire genres from grief, transformed into speculative brilliance about humanity's fragility. Percy had commissioned the Ariel, a fatally flawed sailboat with open deck and no keel, loaded with 3.5 tons of pig iron for stability. The Ariel capsized July 8, 1822, in a violent Gulf of La Spezia squall, drowning Percy Shelley, Edward Williams, and 18-year-old cabin boy Charles Vivian in 20 minutes. Italian fishermen had warned them to reef sails, but Percy reportedly seized Williams's arm to prevent it, thrilling to the storm's power in his final, reckless gamble. Percy's decomposed corpse washed ashore July 18th near Viareggio, identified by John Keats's poems in his jacket pocket. One dead romantic poet, carrying another's verses to watery grave. Edward Trelawney supervised the beach cremation on scorching sand, the fire burning with white heat so intense that the iron grating beneath became incandescent, consuming everything. Trelawney later claimed he snatched Percy's heart from flames, severely burning himself, though cardiologists insist hearts combust at cremation temperatures, making this romantic fiction rather than fact. Mary treasured this dubious relic 29 years regardless, wrapped in silk, locked in her writing desk. Biological impossibility transformed into Gothic keepsake of enduring love. Widowed at 24 with infant Percy Florence, Mary faced Sir Timothy Shelley's vindictive control, the baronet blaming her entirely for corrupting and destroying his son. He provided starvation wages, £100 annually in 1823, grudgingly increased to £200, then £300, finally £400 by 1841, conditional on total compliance. Most cruelly, Sir Timothy banned publishing Percy's poetry during his lifetime, threatening to withdraw all support if she revealed his son's radical atheistic verses publicly. In June 1824, Mary published posthumous poems of Percy Bysshe Shelley, selling 300 copies before Sir Timothy forced her to suppress the remaining 200. Mary subverted his censorship through editorial genius. Her 1839 four-volume edition embedded full biography within editorial notes, creating memoir disguised as scholarly apparatus. These notes defended Percy against calumny, contextualized his atheism as youthful idealism, explained his radical politics, establishing his reputation while technically obeying Sir Timothy's legal restrictions. Financial desperation drove constant production. 5 novels, over 20 short stories for the Keepsake and other annual gift books, travel writing, and biographical entries. She became the only woman among 38 contributors to Dionysius Lardner's Cabinet Cyclopedia, writing 5 volumes of literary biographies on Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and French writers. Working from home under financial pressure, she produced scholarly entries on Petrarch, Boccaccio, Machiavelli, Cervantes, demonstrating erudition unusual for women denied university education. "I write bad articles, which help to make me miserable," she complained about hackwork for magazines, yet bills demanded she produce whatever editors would purchase. Her later novels, Lodore, Faulkner, The Fortunes of Perkin Warbeck, explored female survival within patriarchal constraints, each reflecting her own navigation of widowhood's precarious independence. Multiple men proposed marriage: American actor John Howard Payne in 1825, French writer Prosper Mérimée, even Edward Trelawney, but Mary chose uncertain freedom. This rejection of remarriage proved extraordinary when matrimony offered women's only financial security, yet Mary preferred earning through her pen to comfortable subjugation. Sir Timothy finally died April 24th, 1844, at age 90, freeing Mary to publish Percy's complete works with full biographical commentary after 22 years. February 1st, 1851, Mary died from a brain tumour aged 53, buried at St. Peter's Church, Bournemouth, with her parents' exhumed remains and Percy's preserved heart. The runaway bride became literature's most influential woman, her created monster more eternally alive than any contemporary's carefully respectable work. Scandal transformed into immortal genius. And now we'd love to see you in the comments. Have you read the actual novel Frankenstein before, or alternatively, have you seen the new film? We look forward to hearing your thoughts below, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Allure.